Last on Everdark. Julian and Christian headed into Moonfall on their own, only to find the whole place crashing down upon them. Realizing that time was of the essence, the two of them race to where Christian senses the soul gems containing Julian's parents. They find them in a building made of pale stone, but before they are able to get them, two terrible creatures attack. While Christian and Julian successfully defeat the creatures, they find a far greater foe, Kmon, and that is when they realize a great and terrible truth. Kmon is Kali. Episode 126, Discovery. Balthazar paced along the length of the dining room table. He'd set Mephi down on one of the chairs, and the battle cat had fallen asleep in a tight little ball. Damon had gone off after the boys. He should have been able to bring them back immediately, and yet 10 minutes had passed since Damon had teleported away, and he had not returned. What is taking him so long? What's the problem? Fiona, who had been the one pacing before, now watched him out of concerned eyes as she suggested,
"Perhaps you ought to sit down, Balthazar. You don't look well."
"I'll sit down when Damon brings the boys back. I can sit very well then," Balthazar snapped, but she was right. He was exhausted. He felt worn thin. He didn't so much want to sit down as to collapse, but he couldn't, with Christian and Julian out doing who knew what. Christian's mind was closed to him. He wouldn't admit that his fledgling's mind was completely gone, out of reach, even though some part of him was sending out a warning signal that it was. He couldn't feel Julian's mind either. And Damon seemed to be made of stone at the moment. That can't be good. What is going on? How could Damon not stop two newly made fledglings? He reached for Damon again, but the Vampire King remained silent. There was a sense that Damon was praying. Why is he praying? What were they thinking? Where did they go? Balthazar's hands flew up in the air. They don't know where the gate to Moonfall is, so... Balthazar stopped in mid-step, and then spun around towards Kmon, his eyes narrowing as he hissed, "You." Kmon hadn't moved since the boys had left. He had sat there, upright and with his fingers laced together on the table before him like a good little schoolboy. But the flash of guilt he gave at Balthazar's words about the boys not knowing the location of the gate to Moonfall was like a bat signal to him. Kmon knew something. Kmon was responsible for something bad. He practically radiated guilt, even though his outside demeanor was still and unruffled. I trusted him. Should I have trusted him? We've been enemies for a long time. A few good deeds and I opened my house to him, opened my heart to him. What was I thinking? What did you do, Kmon? Balthazar asked as he stalked towards his blood brother. If he has done what I think he has, he is no brother to me. He will not survive this night if he has hurt a hair on the boys' heads. The whine of his fear and anger filled his head as he could not hear Kmon's thoughts. Sia turned her bandaged eyes towards the Kali vampire, even as Sophia patted her mistress's shoulder. The childlike vampire seemed unsurprised by what was coming, but instead was simply sad. Sad for everyone.
Kmon?
Sia asked, her voice soft.
It had to be done,
Kmon stated.
Yes, it did. It did.
She agreed, and there was something in her voice that Balthazar could not read, and the whine in his head blocked out her thoughts too.
"You told the boys how to get to Moonfall, Kmon? You told them to go?"
Fiona asked, her eyes huge. She looked stunned that Kmon had betrayed them.
Yes.
Kmon answered without a sliver of hesitation or shame. He spoke in the same tone as he would of the weather. Balthazar exploded across the room at him. His hands were on Kmon's neck, and he had the other vampire up against the wall. Kmon's feet were 6 inches from the ground. Balthazar hadn't even been aware of moving, and it had seemed like he had teleported, he'd gone so fast. Kmon did not resist him, not even to put his hands up to his throat as Balthazar's fingers squeezed. "How could you do it?" Balthazar screamed. Spittle left his lips and sprayed Kmon's face, but he didn't care. He would spit into Kmon's face. He had sent the boys to their second deaths. How could you betray us? We took you in. We saved you from Calais. We offered you a second chance. Betrayal and rage fed that whine in Balthazar's head, and he couldn't hear the answers to his questions or delve into the Calais vampire's mind. Had Kmon always been a traitor? Had he somehow managed to hide his continued allegiance to Calais? But everything that Balthazar had seen in his head told him no. So what happened? The last encounter with Artemis Calais in the dungeon had not been pleasant for Kmon. There had been no exchange to warrant this turn of events. Kmon stayed calm, but choked out.
Because it had to be done.
Had to be done? Had to be done? Balthazar slammed Kmon against the wall again and again until the plaster cracked, then broke altogether and tumbled to the floor. The air filled with choking white dust that coated Balthazar's tongue as he shrieked. No, it didn't! They didn't have to go!
They did. You know they did.
Kmon gasped out even as his lips turned blue. I know that my newly made fledgling had to go with his best friend to Moonfall, where the creatures are insane. The moons are falling. The Everdark is being destroyed. No, I did not know this. No! Balthazar shouted, but his eyes slid to Seer, who remained still and serene even with this violence. She had foreseen everything that had happened. She had admitted, though, that there were bad things that had to happen for there to be a future that Damon would want and love. But there can be no future like that without Christian and Julian. It can't be, Balthazar continued, his voice almost a child's cry. Not after everything. After waiting and... No, I just got Christian. Damon waited millennia for Julian. They can't just be taken away. It felt like he was bleeding out as he said these words. Fiona clutched the front of her shirt and looked like she might weep. Sophia's head hung like an overly large bloom on a too thin stalk. Mephi was awake as well, looking at him with questioning eyes that blinked sleepily. Why was he shouting? The cat seemed to ask. Why was he screaming? Balthazar shook Kmon again, rattling him. Why? Why, Kmon? After everything, why would you betray us? I thought you cared for the boys. Why?
Too cruel to make you and Damon choose.
Kmon got out between clacking teeth.
Better to be me.
And the whine in Balthazar's head stopped, and he could hear Kmon's thoughts as clear as day all of a sudden. Kmon hadn't given the boys the information on how to get to Moonfall to hurt them, but to help everyone. He was taking on the guilt for sending beloved Julian and Christian to do this task, because he did not want that to lay on Damon and Balthazar's shoulders. To make the masters choose to risk their children. Kmon had done it to spare him and Damon that horrible choice. Kmon would be the villain. Kmon would be hated. That was a role he was used to playing. That his actions were the very opposite did not matter. He understood Balthazar's grief and rage. He would accept it. After all he had done, it was the least he could do. He would not be worthy of the new life they were offering him if he did anything less. Damn you, Kmon. I could have killed you. I could have... Balthazar shook his head. You're not the villain. You're one of us now. You can't just... He brought Kmon down to the ground. His hands loosened around Kmon's throat. Balthazar wobbled with exhaustion and fear and emotional turmoil. He swayed forward, and Kmon caught him. As in all things where Kmon had to deal with other people, he was awkward and stiff. But Balthazar had just been choking him, so there was that. Yet Kmon got him into a chair that Fiona had pulled out. Balthazar sank down into it and put his face in his hands and rocked. Kmon touched his shoulder and immediately withdrew his hand after the pat. Fiona dropped down onto her haunches and rubbed his arms as if trying to get warmth into them. She didn't have a fledgling yet, but she hurt for him. She loved the boys too.
Just what?
Kmon's voice was gravelly. just... Balthazar's voice trembled.
You said I cannot just... What? What can I not do?
Kmon asked, as if it desperately mattered. You can't just leave us. I should have trusted you. I should have... I will, from now on, Balthazar told him. Guilt pricked him again. He had proved Kmon's own low beliefs in regards to being on the outside. He had so quickly tossed the other vampire away. He hung his head. I'm so sorry. I owe you that, at least.
You can see into people's minds. If I had that gift, I would trust no one too.
Kmon stated as he cleared his throat several times. I couldn't hear your thoughts. Not until the end there. Balthazar gritted his teeth. He had been out of control. He wasn't healed from facing Artemis Callie. He had insisted he was fine, but he was not. And he'd attacked Kmon. I couldn't think. My head. I need the boys back. I need the boys. Fiona, can you take us to the gate?
They have to go alone, Balthazar.
Sophia interrupted.
Seer explained that. It still holds true. You don't want to undo everything now, do you?
Balthazar looked into her large silver eyes. She meant every word she said. For a moment, he saw Christian and Julian's broken bodies under white stones. He jerked away from her mind as if he had put his hands in flames.
It's true, Eros. They must do this on their own.
Seer confirmed with a sigh. With a voice still hoarse from the choking, Kmon said,
They will come back. I have no doubt of this.
But if they don't... Balthazar's voice was suddenly hoarse too, as if he had been strangled or screaming for hours.
They will. Have faith in them.
Kmon said.
They are stronger and more capable than we give them credit for.
Seer spoke then. Her voice was soft and still strange with that note of uncertainty yet familiarity.
You always have been the one to do the hard things, Kmon, to make the decision that cuts the deepest for what you think must be done. You take on the burden of others.
And you have always been the one to tell unwelcome truths. I've learned to trust you.
Kmon responded as he, too, sat down again.
You said they had to go, Seer. I knew that. No matter what anyone wanted, that there was no other way.
In Everdark, Kmon started as the villain that you loved to hate, and then became many people's favorite character as Kmon's complex and painful backstory came out. It turns out that my readers love a redeemed villain even more than I do, and my members demanded that Kmon get his own love story. That's exactly what I'm doing in Everdark Equinox, the third installment in the Everdark story world. If you love Kmon, you will love not only Everdark Academy, the completed second installment where he's a main character, but Everdark Equinox, where he literally meets his other half. While you really do need to read Everdark Academy first, you can at least check out the beautiful artwork of Kmon and Quinn we have so far. And there will be more. Link to the story art is in the notes.
Balthazar knew that Kmon had had Seer prisoner in the spire for centuries, so he shouldn't have been surprised by Seer's use of the word always. And yet, there was something about it that made it seem like Kmon had been doing this for far longer.
What do you need, Balthazar?
Fiona asked.
I know you need Christian and Julian back, but what else do you need? Arceus, Elgar? Oh, wait, I know what you need. Mephi.
She went over to where the ball of fluff still sat and picked him up. She tickled Mephi under the chin and scratched between his ears before bringing him back to Balthazar. He felt a little foolish as he clutched the kitten, who gave out a piteous meow. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to squeeze you so hard. Balthazar murmured into the soft fur. Touching the animal calmed him. The aching in his head eased. He closed his eyes for a moment as he listened to Mephi purr. How could he take such comfort in a cat when Christian and Julian were missing? Yet the little animal focused him. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes, feeling more himself again. Balthazar said, Thank you, Fiona. She nodded, acknowledging it even as she said,
Again, no thanks needed. We're all in this together, as you said. And you are rather precious with Mephi in your arms.
He snorted. I earned that.
Who knew you would be a cat person? I like both, but prefer dogs.
She said with a grin, but that quickly faded as the weight of the situation fell upon them again. Balthazar was haunted by what Christian and Julian were being confronted with. They are adventurers. How many times did I watch them get in trouble on their show? They were mortal then, and I watched with amusement. Now, I would do anything for them to be in this world so I could help them. Balthazar reached out to Christian again. This time, when there was no sense of his fledgling at all, he accepted it as the truth. I can't reach Christian's mind. I guess that's to be expected in Moonfall.
Why expected in Moonfall?
Fiona asked.
Moonfall isn't just separated from the other parts of the Everdark by space,
Kmon explained.
but by time as well.
Time?
Fiona's eyebrows rose.
Meaning it's...
Out of our time stream, or so it's thought.
Kmon waved one of his long-fingered hands through the air.
You could meet someone there that's from centuries in the past or centuries from the future. You could even meet yourself there.
wild.
Fiona shook her head.
I had heard of Moonfall, but never really knew much about it.
I didn't encourage people to think about it as preceptor.
Kmon pointed out.
Why?
Fiona's brow furrowed.
In Moonfall, the Everdark is being destroyed.
Kmon explained.
What?
Fiona's eyes went huge again.
Some terrible destruction is being wrought there. They say that if you come there at the right moment or stay too long, the whole place is destroyed and then made over again. Not that you know that, as you are no longer alive.
Kmon stated.
That your soul is unmade, too. Many rumors are attached to it, but very little true science.
Christian will love it then, Balthazar said glumly. A scientific mystery.
Yes, Christian is wise that way. He will not let there be any shibboleths. He and Julian will investigate them all.
Kmon agreed. If they come back.
It's the end, which is why Damon cannot go there.
Sia added. Fiona's forehead furrowed again.
But Damon is the ultimate of the immortals. Why can't he go to a place where we can?
The Everdark and Damon, I think, are more linked than we know.
Kmon stated.
The creatures there reacted to his awakening before he stepped foot in Solace.
There are things that are our antithesis.
Sia answered her.
Moonfall is Damon's. He simply cannot exist in that place of death.
Balthazar reached out to Damon again. He needed to confirm what he already knew, that Julian and Christian were in Moonfall. He touched Damon's mind again, and like before, there was this hum that reminded him of prayer. The Vampire King was so focused on this that he left a chink open in his mind's armor that Balthazar teased open and slipped inside. Damon's mind was connected to something huge and unknowable and massive, and Balthazar's skin prickled with sweat as he suddenly started to slip into the Vampire King's mind and lose himself. He was falling. He was drowning in alien thoughts and dreams, and where was he? Who was he? He was all and nothing. He was the beginning with no end. He was... No, Iros, you cannot be here, Damon said almost sadly. Too clever for your own good. Damon! The sensation of falling stopped. He felt like someone had him by the scruff of the neck and was holding him up to look at as if he was a naughty kitten. You should not be here, my friend. But I know why you are, Damon said. You were afraid to tell me that you let them go. Our boys, our children. Balthazar's voice caught. Yes. Kmon told them where to go. He didn't want to leave that choice to us. He thought it cruel. Balthazar paused, then added, I attacked him without knowing that. You were upset. I shouldn't have done that in any case. I appreciate his actions in this. I would never have been able to do it, Damon admitted. But you did. Only because Julian and Christian had the determination and knowledge to go ahead with it, Damon admitted. I cannot go on without Julian. You won't have to. They will come back. They will. Balthazar tried to put force and belief in his voice. I will remain here for them. As soon as they return, I will bring them to the house, Damon stated. Forgive me for this, Balthazar. There's nothing to forgive, Balthazar assured him. Balthazar opened his eyes and said to the others, Damon's waiting for the boys to come back through. He let them go. He could have stopped them, but this had to happen. I don't know if he'll survive this, if Julian and Christian don't return.
If they had not gone, the whole of the world would fall,
Sia said as Sophia patted her, recognizing the heavy weight her mistress carried in her truth-telling. It comes down to our 2 fledglings. Good God. They have to come back. Tell me that they will come back, Sia, Balthazar demanded.
I can't.
She lowered her head.
It's a turning point, and I cannot see beyond it until there is a choice made. Moonfall being out of time makes this more difficult.
So we just wait? Balthazar asked. What is this choice? Who is making it? Can we convince them somehow from here to come down in our favor? Sia opened her mouth. He could almost see her lips forming the word no. But then she stopped. Her head lifted, and though her eyes were still missing or regenerating beneath a bandage, appearing to be seeing all of them. Then the faintest smile appeared on her lips. She murmured,
Actually, we already have.
How can that be?
Kmon frowned.
Unless time... but...
The Kali vampire went silent. Stroking his chin, his mind was a whir. But Balthazar was simply too tired to go through the twists and turns of Kmon's consciousness to find out what he was thinking. My head hurts, Sia. Can you not just speak plainly? Balthazar practically begged.
I'm sorry, Balthazar, but I cannot say more. Just know that you've done everything you can to make the decision coming in our favor.
Sia answered. Balthazar's right knee started to jump up and down. He couldn't sit still, but he was too exhausted to get up. The whine in his mind was back. He kissed Mephi's fuzzy head to self-soothe.
I suppose there's no chance of you actually resting, though you really need it.
Fiona said quietly as she stood and stretched. No, I can't. Not until they're back, Balthazar said. There was a sudden knock on the door. It was Ridley. Her mind was awash in anxiety and excitement. A flood of her thoughts came to Balthazar. Men and women with guns, black helicopters, grenades, UV flashbangs, even garlic crosses and stakes. Balthazar laughed at the last. The FBI were going to be outside House Ravenscroft in minutes. And evidently, they believed in vampires after all. Join us next time for episode 127, Change.
While we make a little ad money from YouTube, Wraith Rain is mostly supported by our memberships, Amazon sales, and shop sales. If you subscribe to us, you get uncensored audio episodes, exclusive gay romance stories, the ability to read and comment on chapters the instant I publish them, and 60% discounts on audiobooks in our shop. Not a subscription person? You can also buy audiobooks, ebooks, and hardcovers from our shop. Links to both the sign-up page and shop are in the notes.